I just finished my first draft! Woo! Obviously, it still needs a lot of work, especially the point of view, because I completely changed it halfway through. And now I need to rewrite the first half to fit. My original POV was just not working and it was boring. It was so boring. And that made me think about different, more exciting ways to tell a story by using interesting POVs, timelines, and maybe even play around with medium a little bit.
Can I see you tomorrow night?
Sure. But don't you mean tonight?
Hi, I'm Inka and I'm currently writing a military cosmic horror novel called MSV Shelter while filming the process. In the months of June and July, I'm deep diving into outlining, and today we're going to talk about gimmicks. Gimmicks. They get such a bad rap. The Cambridge Dictionary defines a gimmick as something that is not serious or of real value, that is used to attract people's attention or interest temporarily, especially to make them buy something. As a wrestling fan, I disagree. Yes, if a gimmick is bad, it's just attention grabbing and shallow and dumb. But when it's good, it manages to bring out a deeper truth at the heart of the content or the wrestler. Because a gimmick is really just a designing principle, a guideline for how to design your story, and designing is all about giving shape to content to bring out the best of it. Gimmicks aren't just tagged onto a story, they emerge organically out of it, and if you disregard them entirely, you're doing your story a disservice. I tried Googling writing gimmicks, but I came up with zilch. So I decided to do it myself and came up with 3 categories: narration gimmicks, time gimmicks, and media gimmicks. Narration gimmicks are all about the POV, the point of view. Every story needs a POV, and that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about gimmicks not being tagged on, but something to be unburied in your story. At one point or another, you must make a decision about the POV of your book. Is it first person, second person, or third person limited, or omniscient? If you don't know what that means, look it up. My script is already long enough. Then we have to decide who tells the story. Is it the protagonist or a character observing the protagonist, like in The Great Gatsby? Do you follow just one character or many characters? How and when do you switch POVs? Is it every other scene or chapter? Do they keep coming back, or is it a one-off? Are they used to reveal or conceal information for the viewer? Is your POV character reliable? In the movie Rashomon from 1950, the story is told through several witnesses to a single event, and each of them tells a contradictory tale. What do you think the theme of the movie is about? Rashomon is a perfect example of how a gimmick can not just bring out the heart of the story, but be the heart of the story. First, the simple decisions. Is it present tense, past tense, or are you ready to get freaky with the future? And then comes the fun bit. John Truby, in his book The Anatomy of Story, talks about something he calls story movement. He observed the patterns nature uses to connect elements in a sequence. Those patterns being linear, meandering, spiraling, or spiral, branching, and explosive. The linear movement is what we know from most stories. We follow the events chronologically and without much fat on them. The meandering movement is a bit fattier, heavier, it takes its time getting there and languishes in its prose and characters, inner turmoil and world and whatever. I'm not making fun of this movement, it's my favorite kind. I use it all the time. The spiral movement turns around a center, always returning to that one moment in time and delving deeper into it with every pass. No worries, I'm going to explain it in more detail later on. The branching movement I still don't fully understand. John Truby talks about these branches representing little shut-off ecosystems that the character explores and probably learns from, like in Gulliver's Travels. So I guess what he means is episodic or semi-episodic storytelling. And finally, we have the explosive movement. John Truby himself seems a bit lost on this one as well, but don't worry, baby, I've got you. Or I think I've got you. I think I found a movie that it kind of fits. Maybe, we'll see. I don't quite understand what he means by elements in the story. Is he talking about story events or bigger plot points or chapters or scenes? I just found his model overall a bit unhelpful because he didn't explain how these movements would be used in practice and just gave a few examples. So I'm here to look at some of those examples, not books, because I started the script 5 days ago and I'm not going to read a bunch of books for this. I watched one of the recommended movies that apparently falls into the spiral movement category, Vertigo, which had been on my watch list for a long time. I got 5 minutes into it and I turned it off because fuck that movie. The exposition at the start is actually hilarious, and fuck Patrick Stewart, such a creepy old man. I'm sorry, Laura, but you know I'm right. After that, I decided that Memento will do. And I won't even have to rewatch that one because the structure is still so clear in my mind from trying to figure it out as a kid. I'm sorry, Mad God, but you've got to go. So in Memento, we follow Leonard, who has short-time memory issues. So chronologically, this is the start, this is the end, and we start with the end, but backwards. It is played backwards and it's in color. This is just to set the tone and, you know, kind of prime you for the experience. None of the other scenes will be played backwards, thank God. Then the next scene actually starts at the very beginning and it's in black and white. Then we go back and play this scene, and this is in color. Then we go back again to the black and white scene, and it just continues on and on and on, just dun 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 dun, until we reach the midpoint at which the big twist happens and the theme is kind of laid out for us plainly to see. Building it like this with the big midpoint that the whole story revolves around and putting it at the very end, it just heightens the impact and leaves no doubt about what the meaning of the story is. Once again, the gimmick is there to tell the story in the most resonant way. Now to another example, which is actually a favorite of mine, called 1124. In that one, we follow a lot of different characters. And again, this is the chronology. Let's say this is 1124. In the first sequence, we follow a guy who's drunk driving, and we follow him shortly before this time where the first accident happens. And then we follow him kind of to the end of his story. Then that's the first sequence. Then we have the second sequence in which we follow a bunch of idiot teenagers, and it has basically the same structure. A big thing happens about 1124. We find out a bit more about what actually is happening at 1124 because everybody is a bit confused. Then in the third sequence, we start a bit sooner, but again the big thing happens around here. In the third sequence, by the way, we follow Patrick Swayze, who's still beautiful in that movie. And in the fourth sequence, we follow Sean Hattasey, who is actually the reason why I picked the movie as a teenager. I used to just stalk the IMDb pages of certain actors and actresses and just go through it. And I used to find a lot of hidden gems that way. I don't really do that anymore. Maybe I should. Anyway, in the fourth sequence, we follow Sean Hattasey. I think it also around this time, it's kind of the same. And in the fifth sequence, is that the last? Wait. Yeah, I think that's the last sequence. We start even earlier, and this last sequence, of course, gives us the last puzzle piece to the mystery and ties it all together beautifully. This time around, there's not really a message here, except for maybe that people are stupid and get what's coming to them. I don't know. It's a fun movie, though. I think this story fits into John Truby's explosive movement, but It could also be another example for the spiral story, because it keeps coming back to the same time and unraveling the moment further and further. As I said, his model is a bit mid. These are just 2 examples to activate your neurons a bit, maybe give you more ideas. And we have found an answer to one of my questions. If these story elements John Truby was talking about are scenes, plot beats, or chapters. And apparently it can be either. Memento does it with scenes and 1114 does it with chapters. There are also, of course, looser forms of this. The last book I've read, Blue Movie, an autobiography, was separated into scenes. Every scene was numbered and told a short snippet from the author's life. Or whole life novels that follow one character from their birth to their death, like in 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which I haven't read yet, but it's on the list. The epistolary novel is a good example for this, like in Dracula or Frankenstein, where the whole story is told through letters. We have the found footage horror with movies and anthologies. We've got fake academic papers about fake academic papers, about fake documentaries, about fake haunted houses. In The House of Leaves, guess what the theme of that book is about? And I'm going to cut this category short before Narration Me is going to unalive herself, ourselves. Most of these examples are movies, because I only really started reading again this year. But I found a book list on Goodreads created by Jonathan Crombs, compiling a few books with strong gimmicks. And you can find the link in the description. Yeah, finally I can put links in there. Thank you. All stories are a combination of these categories, one being usually more noticeable than the others, but every element must fit into the broader picture. The design is a short, comprehensive overview of how your story is told. One of my stories that I haven't finished yet starts out in first-person present tense, with a man writing a letter before leaving the mysterious figure in the corner of the room to finish the story for him. After that, the story follows a protagonist in third-person limited past tense. That is, until the protagonist turns into a monster. And then the story switches back into first person. And the reader hopefully realizes that that mysterious figure from the start, who's writing the letter, is the protagonist we've followed all along. Finally, we arrive back in the present tense once more, with the first-person narrator finishing his story and another man's life. This design incorporates everything from the narration gimmick to the time gimmick and media gimmick, and hints at what the story is actually about. Now though, it's time to finish the hard task of coming up with a design for my current project, MSV Shelter. I gave an overview of all aspects of my novel in my first video. It's a bit shit, but you're welcome to watch it. And from the start, the design was the weakest aspect of them all. I started out with 2 POVs, each told from one of the 2 love interests, because the story is a hidden romance. The POVs would switch every chapter and be written in a third-person limited, which then changed into first person. But while writing, I started to despise that idea. It took away the mystery of the characters. It undermined the theme of voyeurism. And when you're stuck inside the guy's head, it's really hard to objectify him. So I changed it up in the last quarter after a light bulb moment during writing group meetup. In my last book, the story was told from the point of view of a goddess, and I love that inhuman voice. A certain distance and objectivity can turn horror from something visceral into something really haunting. The goddess also had a mini character arc that echoed the change of the protagonist, and I really liked that as well. The main character of MSV Shelter, Necro, is a voyeur who struggles to connect with people. One of the first ideas for the POV actually had been to have the narrator be a camera system. That though had been before I came up with the biomechanical spider spies Necro uses, so I threw that idea out. But now it's perfect. The spiders are everywhere, they have their own will, so they can choose what they want and what they don't want to show the audience or Necro. And in the lore of my world, their race is called Bergdinger, and they are treated like machines, although they are sentient. They are unable to communicate because language is forbidden to be designed into them. The spiders connect with Necro and others through spying on them, trying to understand them, to become more like them. Everybody in my story slowly starts to mutate because of the toxins they are exposed to. Even the spiders, who are Bergdinger and again are thought of as machines. They mutate just like everybody else and become part of a hive mind that connects them with the other soldiers. This would destroy the order of my story, where in one chapter I focus on Necro and then in the other on Cheek. But that might actually be a good thing, because that separation had become a bit stifling and I want to focus more on the other soldiers as well, turn the story more into an ensemble instead of just a romance. This new approach would also cut out the kind of navel gazing I used as a crutch in my first draft. So, after all that fuss, my design turns out to be super simple. MSV Shelter is told in first-person present tense from the point of view of a spy system. As the story goes on, the spy system mutates and starts connecting with other people's brains. In the last chapter, this connection develops into a full-blown hive mind with the thoughts and feelings of every character available to one another. Perfect! I don't know if hive mind is the right term, but I know what I mean, and I hope you know what I mean as well. It's not about conformity, but community. And so we have finished level 3 of the outlining process. Hooray! I hope this was interesting to you. If you feel ready to start your first draft now, off you go. I'm going on to level 4 and you can catch me there next Friday. Bye!